Hello, whoever decided to click on this video and is now watching it. I am the man with no life, and today I welcome you to my garage, where I'm going to show you how to construct a knife with your own two hands while only using basic tools. Because that's all I have is basic tools. I will be using a process called the stock removal method, which is basically just cutting out the metal into shape rather than having to hammer it into shape with a hammer, forge, anvil, fire, and manly awesomeness. But sadly, I don't have an anvil. And if I did, I would unleash it upon my enemies. Now allow me to switch into my working man's apparel, and I will begin this tutorial shortly. Boop. Anyways, for starters, I want to say I'm using this steel right here. It's carbon steel I picked up at Home Depot for like $9.50, something like that. I don't know much about steel, but I don't think this is the best steel to use for making knives. But there is steel on Amazon. It's called O1 steel. Everybody seems to like using that steel for like making knives and such. It's got like almost perfect 5-star rating, if that means anything to you. But you know, I'll make this work. This cold, dirty steel. So yeah. Now the first thing you want to do before you start hacking away on your metal is to come up with a design. I've made a few in my spare time. They're all very simplistic in my opinion. I was going to go with this. It just seemed like the most practical and logical thing to make. But I ultimately went with this. It's like a futuristic Tonto kind of thing. Draw it out onto a piece of foam board, cardboard, or just plain old paper. Then cut that shit out to make the template. It's also a good idea to make a template so you get a feel for the knife in your hand. And right now, this knife feels like sex. I don't know what sex feels like, but I assume it feels like this knife. This is getting weird. Moving on. Now I prefer using layout fluid, but good old-fashioned Sharpie works just as fine, so, you know, personal preference. I still prefer this though. You can use a hacksaw to do this, but if you're impatient like me, then you could use a cutoff tool, bandsaw, jigsaw, or if you're crazy and or insane like me, you could even use a rotary tool. I'd strongly advise you not to use a circular saw though. Once you cut the knife out, start profiling the knife. I like to start out using a bench grinder to clean up the edges quickly. Then I head to the slow and tedious process of using files to clean it up more thoroughly and give the knife its bevels. I use that little chunk of metal to give the blade a ricotta line. You could use a piece of wood. Okay, once you've finished profiling your knife, you have to drill some holes into it. Before you do that, you have to beat it with a hammer and this thing. I don't know what it's called. The center punch is for the drill so that the bit doesn't dance around the metal. You might say that it keeps the drill centered. You should clamp the blade down so that you don't run the risk of accidentally getting a bisectomy. My next order of business is making the handle. And I'm using this piece of wood I picked up off the ground. I don't know where it came from, but I'm going to turn it into a work of art. Or not. I can't predict the future. For all I know, it'll turn out to be shit. This whole project could turn out to be shit. But you know what? At least I tried. Trace about a ½ inch away from the blade to make the outline of the handle pieces. Use whatever wood cutting tools you have to cut the pieces out, whether it be an electric saw or a bunch of hand saws. I wish I had a jigsaw to do this. Then clamp the knife to the handle pieces and drill the holes through it. Temporarily assemble it together with wooden dowels so that you can begin shaping the handle. I used a wood rasp, because that's all I had. If you have a belt or disc sander, then good for you. This process will be faster and funner for you than it was for me. Now don't get as close to the blade as I did. Leave a little bit more material on the handle for later. Now then, you may think you're done, but if we were to sharpen this blade now, it would never hold its edge. So, the next thing to do, before permanently adhering the handle, is to take this thing and throw it in a damn fire. Which, I'm a pyro, so it should be fun. Or, really, disastrous. This is my forge. Feel free to make fun of it. I know it's pathetic, but it gets the job done. Fire it up with a bag or two of charcoal, then throw the chunk of metal into the fire. The whole reason we're doing this is to harden the blade, because the metal is just too damn soft to hold an edge. Check it every so often and keep moving it around to evenly temper the blade. And watch the tip. You don't want to burn off the tip. Use a magnet to check the blade. When it's no longer magnetized and doesn't stick to the metal, then it's ready. It's still sticking here, so I just threw it back. Like a fish. When it's ready, drown it into some warm oil. I use peanut oil. You could use vegetable oil or even motor oil. Also, get a bigger container to do this with. It wasn't until the last minute that I realized, oh shit, I don't have a bucket to do this with. because you want to swirl it around and not have it scrape against the sides like I was with this damn mixing bowl. Now the blade is full on hardened, but now there's a problem. It's too hard, teehee, and it can easily break. Next thing to do is clean it off with wet sandpaper. I've heard people say 400 degrees. I've also heard people say 450 degrees. I went with 450 degrees because I want my blade to be nice and crispy. Wait for it to preheat, then throw it into the oven for 2 hours. Excuse my gross appearance, I had just got through doing my insanity workout. But nobody cares about that, so let's just get back to the knife. Just take it out and drown in some oil again. Now it is softened up again and won't be easily broken. But it's harder than it was before. Teehee. I just wanted to show you the cool color it turned to. I might take advantage of this in a future project. Now clamp it down and start sanding it. Use a variety of wet dry sandpaper grits. I went from grits 100 all the way up to 2,500. I was going to use 3,000, but there is no damn way I was going to spend $6 on one tiny ass piece of sandpaper. Within each grit, make sure you remove the scratches left behind by the previous grit so that you can get the maximum shine. Of course, you could just use a buffing wheel to polish the blade, if you have one. Look at that shine. To attach the handle, I used Gorilla 5-minute epoxy. I also chopped up a steel rod into little pieces to use as the pins. Rough up the inside of the handles with sandpaper to give the epoxy something to cling onto. Mix it as thoroughly as possible and don't use giant globs like I did. Just enough to coat the handle in a thin but not too thin layer. I soon regretted this when I went to clamp it. If you have to, use a rubber mallet to assemble the knife. But don't be too rough doing this like I was, or shit like this will happen. Put something between the clamps and the handle so that the clamps don't damage the handle. And don't clamp onto the pins. That would be counterintuitive. Use as many clamps as you need. No such thing as overkill in my world. File down the pins until they are flush with the handle. Then finish shaping the handle with sandpaper. Or a belt or disc sander. If you have one. Last thing to do is sharpen the blade. Actually that kind of looks like shit. Here, let me work on it some more. Yes! Yes! There it is. In its finished glory. And damn, it looks sexy. Well, average at least. It's not perfect, but I dig it. And there you go. If all these steps correctly, then you should come out a pretty decent knife. Maybe better. Now, I should mention that this is my first knife I have ever created in my entire short life. And for my first knife, it came out pretty decent. I mean, it doesn't look anything like my original drawing, but it's still pretty decent. If you're watching this video because you're actually planning on making a knife, then I wish you the best of luck. And I hope anything I say helps you in your journey of your knife creation. Even my dick jokes. Wait, did I make any dick jokes in this video? I should make a dick joke. I can't think of anything. Let's just end this video now. If you liked this video for any strange reason, feel free to press the little like button. If you liked me for any strange and bizarre reason, then you should probably go see a doctor or press the subscribe button. And if you feel like it, pop a comment in the comment section. I will most likely get to it because I have no life.